All right, I think we're ready to go with the regular Board of Education meeting of June 26, 2024. I have 7 PM on my clock. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, could you call our attendance roll call, please?
I can do that. Mr. Vinatieri?
Here.
Mr. DeRue?
Here.
Mr. Moses?
Here.
Ms. Knox?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Berkmeyer?
Here.
And Mr. Richards is here.
Great. I would entertain a motion at this point to approve the agenda as it has been presented to you.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Wow, I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. Mr. Moses. It's been a long day. Call the roll on that, sir.
Motion by Ms. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Vinatieri?
Yes.
Mr. DeRue? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer?
All right, motion carries. Moving on down the agenda. Item D, Superintendent's Update. Mr. Jankowski.
Go over basically three things. Benchmark testing been doing with students.
Thank you.
We'll be looking at the preliminary benchmark testing results. We'll be looking at construction updates and then where we're at or where we think we're at with the state budget for schools. So preliminary benchmark assessment results, we've been working over the last 18 months pretty much to move towards a more standards-based, competency-based approach. And as part of that, we use internally, the state covers the majority of the costs is the NWA MAP benchmark testing. That's measures of academic progress. And basically what this test does is it compares students on a national level. It's an adaptive test. So the way that it works is when students take the test, if they get the question right, it gets progressively more difficult. If they get the question wrong, then it gets a little bit easier, and it works through each of the standards. So it's trying to identify, do students know that specific standard? There's some caveats that go with this. One, it uses pre-COVID norms. They haven't changed the norms yet. They will be doing that shortly. They're also changing the test to make it more standards based by grade. Before, as it would go through, if it got more difficult, it would shoot up kind of in the other grades. And now they're trying to center it more on the standards in that grade before it kind of shoots up as it goes from there. They will be updating the norms in 2025. So as they've been working towards this, and as everybody's been moving more towards growth and achievement, they've rolled out these new growth and achievement reports that are available for the district. The caveat for this is we can only go back 2 years. They don't have the data available for any years previous than that. They just did it for the last 2 that are available. So what this looks like, just so you can kind of see, if you're looking at so this is for math, just so you have a comparison. So the first line above is growth, and that's broken into your basic quintiles. So where the achievement level, so you can see for all district-wide, this is math. 12% of students were in the lowest, 20% of achievement, 13% were in the next quintile, 16%, then 21% were in the fourth quintile, and then 38% of kids. And this is for growth. So this is not proficiency. This is how are they doing year over year. On the achievement level, you can see that's the second line. So students coming in, we're 57th percentile, and it has them broken up by quintile. And then at the end of the year, they're at the 66th percentile. So that basically what they do, how they calculate growth is how many students moved from, made this growth jump, and then how do you compare against all other students and districts and so on. The kind of compared to the year before, generally we've always been in a very narrow band between like 45th percentile, 55th percentile, somewhere in there. And so what we've been focusing on, math has been our first focus, and then next year we'll really move math at the elementary level, I should say. That'll expand more into the secondary level. And then ELA will begin at the elementary level next year, and then that'll expand to the secondary level. So you can kind of see from the previous year, our growth was about 55th percentile, and our overall achievement moved from 59th percentile to 60th. And you can kind of look now, then it breaks it down by building. So the high school 64th percentile growth went from 60th to 65th percentile. Middle schools, they were in the 70th percentiles, so 74th percentile for middle school north, 72nd percentile for middle school south. And then the elementaries were all, again, either like, I think the lowest is 65th percentile up to 80th percentile for Naldra. And again, a lot of caveats. We don't have a lot of longitudinal data with this. They're changing the assessment. We don't know the necessary impact with that. But right now, it is promising for us, the direction that's been heading with math. And a lot of that is, you can see it, right? One of the first things we're going to do now that we have this data is start looking at a comparison between those pathfinders that I implemented earlier and see how they compare to everybody else. And right now it's been fairly promising, because you can see these are some of our pathfinders, and we're seeing growth rates of like 93rd, 91st, 93rd, 89th, 73rd, 79th percentile. So that's been very promising for the math areas. And then reading, again, we haven't really done a lot in the reading area yet towards that. That will again begin this coming year with elementary. They'll be working with Dr. Julia Lindsay, and then she will be helping us kind of rebuild our instruction, doing a lot of the science of reading. And that will be coming in. And you can see this is just kind of reflects basically where we've been at. And again, at the high school, we're 42nd percentile for growth, middle school 48th, 42nd percentile. And then right around, except for Naldra, it was at 68th percentile. The rest of them are generally in that same band, 54th, 57th, 53rd, 51st. So again, we're seeing some promise. Once they reset the norms, this will probably reset as well, once we kind of better understand and just have more data as we use this. But this is the preliminary benchmark assessments that the state's been using. Questions on any of these? Okay, moving on. Construction updates. A lot has happened since school let out. What you're looking at here, this is the north hallways upstairs and down. So right now they had done a lot of work waiting. They had to maintain the walls to the hallway because those were fire barriers. And so once school let out, they began demolition for all of this. So you can see that this is all just in the last since school let out. And again, so you can see this is another one. So those are those office areas that are in each of the wings. And you can see they're opening those up. And then there'll be an assistant principal, a secretary, and a counselor in each wing. This is South 100. They've already gone through, opened that up. And then the counselor office now will be in this last area right here between this post and this wall will be the counselor. So it's counselor, secretary, assistant principal. Out here is a commons area for students, teacher workroom behind, and then there are 2 restrooms that will be right back here. Main office, they started right away, cleared that out in order to, a minor layout because we're moving the offices to the wings. That's in process. They focused on the demolition first because we got out a week before most of the other like districts at those contractors, so they could put all of the demolition people on site in order to kind of have that cleared out. We're also, if you notice here, depending on where you park, we working with Head Start, they have a grant, and so they're replacing and updating our elementary playground equipment. And so you can see what's new's been going in with the canopy and the playscapes and so on. So that will be updated for all the programs that are coming here now, the early childhood, Head Start, preschool. Now, state budget update. This is as of 6/15 where we're at. So let me take you through the process, how it typically goes. Budget season starts right after New Year's. There's typically a January consensus revenue estimating conference. That just gives the ballpark. Then governor kicks off with the state of the state. Then she rolls out her executive budget typically shortly thereafter, which she did on February 7th. Then everybody waits for May. They're waiting for the May consensus revenue estimating conference. The reason it's in May is they're waiting for all the April taxes to come in because that's tax day. And a lot of people either wait. And so that's when they know the full picture. And then typically they have a self-imposed deadline of July 1st because that's when our budget year starts. The state budget doesn't start until October 1st. They have not really hit that July 1st budget deadline in most years. Their plan is this year to do that. They're hoping that they'll pass it. They were hoping today, but now it looks like it'll be tomorrow. Most likely it'll be about 2 a.m. the following day on the 28th because they'll go through what's a votorama as they go through everything. So this is the entire budget cycle and starts up there with the first revenue estimating conference. We are here where they have the budgets out from the House, the Senate, the governor, and now they need to put it together into one final budget. In a normal year, you have it kind of, you get your lowest budget estimate, you get your highest budget estimate, and then that's kind of your guardrails, and then you kind of make your projections in between. This year has been anything but normal. Part of it is there's this whole debate on funding sources. There's a lot that the governor and the House and the Senate wants to do. And where do they get the revenue from? So they know ongoing school aid revenue. So there's increasing tax revenue that's been coming in. That's been fairly stable because the economy's been doing well. Decreasing pupil accounts. So now that revenue is divided by fewer students overall in the state. So that's part of it. One-time revenue, they do have some carry forward funding. They did, because they did those stabilization funds. Those had quite a bit of investment proceeds. So they have that as well. And then they have the last of the ESSER funding. They did some set aside funds, as I kind of talked about with the stabilization for transportation and the school meals funds. And then general fund transfers, if they transfer any into that. And then MIPSR's OPEB savings. This has been the main concern for everybody because it's kind of like a found pot of money. So the whole debate has been, do they repurpose? They're anticipating about 670 million. All the original budgets, we're still going to maintain the 3% retiree healthcare contribution and not to really change the MIPSR's rate. And then they wanted to move large sums of money out of basically the K-12 education because the school aid funds historically been K-12 education. So preschool is not really considered part of that because it's pre-K, and community college is obviously past 12th grade, but they've been more and more money. Those costs have been kind of sliding into that. So here's kind of a run through on OPEB, as everybody calls it. It's really other post-employment benefits. It's your non-pension costs. It's your retiree healthcare, your dental and vision benefits. So in September of 2012, they gave everybody an option. If you're an employee and you were directly hired by a district, if you were in the pension system, you had a choice. Do you want these benefits or not? If you wanted those benefits, then you got charged an extra 3%. And then they closed it after that. So what's going to happen is as this goes through, fewer and fewer people will be in that system. So the costs will fall. But they knew they were behind on all of these costs. So before 2012, it was pay as you go. They just made sure they had enough money to pay for whatever the costs were anticipated for that year. They changed the law to create a trust fund. And then they said, no, we need to pre-fund it. So if you have somebody, we're going to pay what the anticipated costs were for the people that you have. And that's where they tacked on a lot of extra fees and the 3% for teachers and really all employees. So your normal cost is the marginal cost of each employee. It pays for their future benefits. Then you have the UAAL, which is the unfunded costs. And then you have your employee contribution. So here's where it gets a little bit of the shell game. So right now, at the end of this, really, they're believing it'll be more than this, but it's 127% funded for the healthcare. More likely, it'll be about 140% funded because their investments have been doing well, all of that. And so they have a $2 billion surplus. So that's where they're looking, can we take this money and move it someplace else? However, that's the healthcare side. The other side is the pension trust fund. It's only 68% funded. It's about 30 billion in debt. So this is where the debate kind of wages where, hey, we have a surplus. We've been handling our budget. We've been doing this. This is actually extra money and we can use it to improve services or add programs like universal preschool, universal lunch, 2 years of community college, and so on. The Republicans have been arguing, but hey, you still have this debt over here. We should use all of that money and pay that off. We should shift it over. Meanwhile, districts are saying, hey, you tack this on as an extra cost. We paid it down, so now there isn't an extra cost, so we should see that roll back. And so we should, because we've been paying extra for it, think of it as if you have a home equity loan or something. You've now paid that off, but they want to continue charging an extra cost. So basically, you have your employer costs, then the unaccrued costs, the employee share, that's on the healthcare side, then the costs on the pension side, the employer extra costs for the unaccrued things, the employee share as well, and then the state kicks in as well. So it's about 670. I've heard that it could be as much as 800 million. And the original plan, and this was kind of was to shift all of the money over, to take what we pay, shift that over to the pension system, then reduce the state contribution. So they wouldn't pay as much in, but we'd be paying into the pension system. And then the state would take that money out as, hey, our costs are down. We'll move it someplace else. Then there was this, it's kind of politics and strange bedfellows, as they say. So all of the associations, so the principals, the superintendents, all of that, and the MEA, the AFT, and all of those are kind of banded together and say, hey, you tack those costs on. And when those were tacked on, you said these, as soon as it gets caught up, those will come off. That's really what should happen. So that hasn't happened. That's a concern right now. So there was this basic letter that went out to members of the Michigan House and the Senate and the governor's office from all of these groups saying, you charge this extra cost for this reason, and now you want to take that extra cost and use it for other things beyond that. So that's where much of the battle is kind of going on. So as of 6:15 today, this is kind of the proposal that's out there. They would reduce the OPEB cost by 5.75 points, not the full 7 and change, for 1 year only. They would look at making the cut permanent at a later date. They would not eliminate the 3% contribution from teachers or employees. In exchange, to get more money, they would cut all the mental health and security funding that they had promised, which is about 300 million. That would go down to about 25 million. There would be no foundation increase. So they wouldn't increase like the actual foundation allowance that would go on. Then, however, because it's very close in the House, it's very close in the Senate. So they need to get everybody to vote because right now the Republicans won't vote for any of this. That's the first hurdle. So there are some people that are holding out because there's like, okay, charter schools need to get something because charter schools don't pay into the pension system. So they would get $400 per student. And the reduction, the 5.75 reduction could end up around $400 for the average district, just so you know. So they would get charters a $400 increase. Right now, typically those pension costs are about $1,800 per student, just so you have an idea, pension and healthcare. The charters do not pay that now, but it's kind of being held out that they would now get $400. So not only would they not have the $1,800, but now that gap would go up to $2,200. And the argument is they are not paying that cost now. Not only are they not paying the cost, you're now charging districts who pay that, who have paid it off. You are now charging employees who have paid that off to now take that money and shift it in order to give it to people who don't have the cost and never put in to pay that cost. What would they do with the other things they would do? This would be the full universal preschool. It would do the full 2 years of community college. It would also allow them to do the SOAR business incentives. This would be about $250 million a year that would come out of the school aid fund over 10 years. Then they would also, there's this late discussion. Some people want to see the Michigan film incentives back, so they would use that as well. That would come out of it. So questions on this, I know it's, and this is likely to change. There's been, over the last 3 days, those groups have been meeting with the governor's office in the House and the Senate 3 or 4 times. They just got out of a meeting at 6:15. That's where I got this update. Okay, seeing no questions, that concludes my presentation.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right. After that, let's move on to hearing of the public. Those who wish to address the board on agenda items may complete a brief request stating their name, address, and the subject of their comments. Remarks about specific employees should be directed to them personally and not included in the public forum. Administration will follow up with concerns within 48 hours of the board meeting. And as a last reminder, we ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. All right, let's see here. Let's start with the order I got them in. I believe Miss Rose was the first one I got. Sure, you're still limited to 3 minutes at this point,
Yeah,
unless one of you would take over after the other.
sure.
Okay.
Okay.
And is that microphone on?
Hello? Hi.
Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tammy Rose. I live at 36620 Markwood Court, New Baltimore, Michigan. I have 2 kids in the Anchor Bay school system. One just graduated and one will be a senior this coming year. I'm going to give my 3 minutes over to Jen, so she can tell a cohesive story. But while she starts, I'm going to hand out some materials if that's okay to everybody. All right.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Stockwell Colombo. I am a resident of New Baltimore, 51212 Maria Street, owner of a local business, member of the DDA and the NBBA of New Baltimore, now 5 years. I'm very grateful to be here today, chance to have a talk with you. There are a lot of things in what we're going to hand out to you that we don't think is something we want to discuss out in the open right now, but we have some concerns as we are voicing the 7 families of the Anchor Bay basketball team that have had a really tough year. We have some information for you, letters that all of the parents had sent last December. It actually, all this started with one email that was sent anonymously by one of our parents, was sent to superintendent. And within a couple days, so the the administration, there was many offices that received the letter. Within 3 days, the coach sent a threatening letter, you'll see right on the top, to the parent. You can read what it says, but it was really, I guess what the reason why I feel this is important to discuss this is I've discovered a lot of fear amongst the families just to be able to speak up, to actually say that you're voicing a concern. We all noticed after getting together with, this is what's nice about New Baltimore. The community of parents are so strong. We have this huge basketball parent team. We know how our kids are doing. We discuss it. All of a sudden, we realize in December that all the kids are having some really serious issues. I mean, breaking down, crying all the time. If they were here, they'd be so upset that I said that. Depressed, withdrawn. The very first day of our coaching meeting, when the parents were there, we were told to stay out of it. The coach requested that we do not intercept any communications with the students. So thinking that, okay, the kids are getting older, we should stand back. And all of a sudden realizing that the boys were no longer communicating with us, yet we were seeing some very, very, very alarming behavior. And I'm talking about a lot of the students, not just hers and mine. It is especially my son, though. Simon seemed to have been the one that they were targeting the most. And I speak about the coach and his assistant. Now, he was told he was a pet project. He was physically addressed and screamed at and yelled at. My son is 6'7". He has dealt with a abusive stepfather. He knows how some situations are not correct. And he is one to stand up for it because he actually spoke his mind. He was often punished. One of the situations that you'll see in here was that there's a coach team thing where everybody gets together and all the guys are excited. Well, Simon had spoke his mind, and whatever the situation was, his team dinner was canceled. So we get together with another parent because the boys were pretty upset and had it at my business instead. And right before the team dinner that we all were gathering to, all the coaches were told by the main coach, do not go to that dinner. If you do, there'll be consequences. And not a single coach, team, all the coaching team, nobody showed up for that dinner. Now, why my son was targeted, I have no idea. But one of the things that bothered me the most is while there was some investigation about the complaints, I want you to read the complaints because I don't know if you were able to. I just want you to read them at home, see how all the parents, their concerns were lined up, whatever. I just think it's something good for you to see. But what was most upsetting is that there has been a determination that we were shared with that there is nothing wrong with the way that the coaching is going. There's no reason why we shouldn't have those coaches there. And I feel like while you have these young men that we're trying to, and we have a strong community, we have these incredible, strong young men, to be broken down so seriously that it affected them so much. And there's so much fear amongst the parents that they're so afraid to say something's wrong. She and I are the only ones who are standing here that are so upset about the way this has been handled. And we do know there's a problem. And for us to know now that there are going to be repercussions and that a lot of these boys will not play, and how they're going to get treated on the court, I don't know. All I know is that there's an awareness of this problem, and somehow it's not being dealt with correctly. But I feel that, and we're here for your suggestions, but I feel that if you really knew straight away, those are actual emails that you can read from the parents to the administration. And why was the person who was being accused of these accusations immediately sent that letter? Why did he get that letter? And then why did he go and threaten the mother that sent it? So these are things that I think you should be concerned about. I don't want to take away anybody's career. I feel that just coaching is somebody who should be there for these boys. Now, there was one coach, Chad, is the one that actually got the boys through. I will say that that man was incredible. He was the one that calmed them down. He was the one that told them to keep pushing forward when they were giving up. So there was a side coach that was like a father figure that was really good for them. Thank God for that. Because listen, when there's so much suicide in this world, when you break a young man down till he actually can't function, it's a dangerous thing. And it's not funny. And all the parents are so concerned, and we're putting it on your desk. Like, can you be that concerned with these students that it shouldn't be this way? I just feel that to be in the knowing of what's happening is the most important thing. We'll walk away from here and either we change these boys' lives, or they were going to find out that when their mother stood up for something that was wrong, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when something's actually wrong. But I feel like this is a good community. And we should stand up for what's wrong. And when things don't seem right, I don't see the reason why we're forced to have two people. They don't have to be there. They have careers, they have jobs. You know what I mean? Why do they have to do this particular job? And so I don't want to say too much more, except for I appreciate you hearing this, but there is a huge community of people that are waiting for us to talk to you tonight to see if anything's going to come out of it. And I just really don't believe that nothing is going to come out of this, that something isn't done. We feel that this kid should be, these are our requests. I don't think the coach should text our sons at 11:30 at night. I don't think it's proper. I think that the parents, even though this person doesn't want the parents involved, we should be copied on every text message that comes in the middle of the night. And why are you calling our kids that at the middle of the night, 11:30 at night? It's not. Why? These are teachers, right? I don't think you guys do that for your
I don't
students.
mean to interrupt you, but you're at your 6-minute limit. So if you could wrap
Okay,
up your comments.
That's fine.
wanna
Thank you.
close? And I'm going to say one thing.
Yeah, one thing. Hold on.
Just one closing thing, and one thing that's kind of haunted me and stuck with me since my conversation with Mr. Jankowski was that he was very proud to say when we met that there's actually parents that stepped up to support this coach. And I think it's and I think that's great that some people had a great experience. But if there's just one person that did not, it's worth all of our attention to address it. So with that, I want to say thank you for listening. You want anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Holly Allen.
Hello, my name is Holly Allen. I live on Sugar Bush in Chesterfield. I'm here because I have 2 children in the school district, and I try to attend as many board meetings as possible that my schedule and time will allow. All the parents here, our time is valuable as well as your time. The couple board meetings that I've been to in the past, we've had bickering between board members, specifically John DeRue. And the meetings aren't about him. And I know that I would appreciate if he kept his bickering previous to the meetings or post meetings and not take up his issues with our valuable time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on down the agenda. I don't have anybody else that requests to address the board. So I will move on to our Semco rebate presentation. Who's presenting that, Mr. Jankowski? Oh, we have a Semco representative here. It's probably a good thing, quite frankly, you're not a DTE representative, because I'm not sure that the people in this room would let you leave if you were. So welcome.
Good evening. My name is Nathan Christensen. I am the Implementation Program Manager for the Semco Commercial and Industrial Energy Waste Reduction Program. It is really the charge and the mission of our particular program to help commercial and industrial customers of all sizes, be they the small mom and pops, coffee shops and diners, or schools, homes of worship, or the largest local manufacturers. It is our mission to help them, find ways to become more efficient, improve their productivity, make sure they're efficient, and help community members find ways to reduce their energy consumption, save money. It's really, at the end of the day, that's what our mission really is. As you are probably aware, the high school just a bit down the street has recently undergone some fairly significant HVAC related changes. And as a result, in working with Corey and local trade allies, a lot of Corey's team, and with your blessing and permission, this project was able to move forward. And as a result, making use of our program, we would like to think that, we have been able to offer a substantial amount back to the school for implementing these energy conservation related measures and controls into the system. So really on behalf of, SEMCO, my team, Corey, and really, our trade allies, I wanted to present to you, the board, this sort of memento check to the tune of about $135,000, just to say thank you, to really encourage all of you and really anyone in this room who's a SEMCO customer. If you're at all interested at energy waste reduction, be it commercially, we do have a residential program as well. Improvements to anything really in your home, gas related. We are very happy to assist from an incentive standpoint, but also educationally when it comes to looking for opportunities, learning about energy and so forth. So I'd like to kind of present this to the group of you, and thank you very much for your time this evening.
Does anybody have any comments before we get the big check? Todd told me he can fit it in the ATM tonight, so it's fine. Everything's fine. Corey, do you want to come up on stage and receive the check? No, I'm good. No, you got it. And your presenter's going to come up and Todd's going to come in. We'll draw some people in here. No, Todd's the photographer. Okay.
Sure, take a picture, puts out it.
Right.
Thank you. Where are you going with the check? Okay, leave the check. It's probably a good time to actually mention, with the support of the taxpayers and some of our bond initiatives in this board, that we have a lot of initiatives that are going on that are reducing electricity use, and we're swapping out inefficient fixtures and light bulbs and HVAC, and obviously SEMCO is our gas provider. So I think that's probably one of the things, if we have a feather in our cap, if you will, as a board, that we've done over the past, I don't know, John, what have been here 5-6 years now? 6 years. Kind of gambling on some of these programs and bringing in these outside consultants and people that are experts in energy reduction. I know we've done some stuff at the Aquatic Center. We've done some different spot, touch points. So and again, it's coming full force with the bond over the next 10 years, with several of the things that the voters have entrusted us to do. So I think it's pretty awesome to get, to recognize $134,000 in savings at this point. No other comments? Hearing none, we will go on to item F, the budget presentation from Mr. Rathbun.
Good evening, board. Earlier in our meeting, prior to the start of the regular scheduled board meeting, we talked about the 24-25 original budget. This presentation is with respect to the 23-24 final budget. So I just want to point that out. You have before you on the screen two yellow columns and a blue column and a variance column. So I'm going to primarily focus on the amended budget, the second yellow column, the third blue column, and then I'll touch on those variances. So we'll talk a little bit about what our final budget is and why it's changed a little bit from when we considered it back in December of 2023. So starting with the revenues, you can see there that in our final budget, we are budgeting just over $81 million in revenues. And that consists of local, state, federal, and other sources. You can see there, the state sources changed about $1.2 million, and that's really been a difference for us this year in that a lot of the categoricals that the state usually provides to us in the early part of the year have really been pushed back. And so we've seen a large increase in some of that categorical funding take place as late as March and April of this year. So in particular, we received a grant 35J that was about $700,000. 350,000 of that had to be obligated this year. And I think it was finally April or May before we kind of knew what we're getting, and the application came out for that. So there are several categoricals that are like that. We got a little bit more money in our at-risk, 22A and 23G are some of the other categoricals that we received later in the year. So that was the primary increase there. Our federal grants, you can see a slight decrease of about $176,000 in that final column, the variance column. That's really more a function of not a decrease in revenue per se. It's just really kind of we're kicking the can down the road. So initially, some of those expenditures and the corresponding revenue were budgeted as of 6/30. This really relates to our summer school that we know will take mostly place in July and maybe a part of August. I think it ends in July, but so we've moved that back a little bit. It's not that we're getting it less, we're just getting less this year. We'll get the remainder of that in the following fiscal year. Then final, our other sources, you can see an increase of about $215,000. Our food service had a really good year this year. They had universal feeding again this year, so a lot more students ate, and despite increased food costs and additional staff, they had a very good year. And so we are able to recoup about $215,000 to help offset some of the indirect costs that we have related to HR, administration, utilities, and things like that typically are not charged to the food service fund. So that's to kind of reimburse the general fund for those indirect costs. As far as expenditures, you can see we're budgeting about $79 million, $79.4 million in expenditures. Those expenditures consist primarily of our instruction. You can see there we're budgeting $47 million, and that is an increase of about $1.2 million. Again, a lot of that relates to these late categoricals. We talked about 35J, 350,000 of that is that they gave us the grant in April and said, you got to spend $350,000 before the end of the year. So we bought a lot of supplies and things that we'll use into the future with that. We've added some literacy tutors. We've added classroom aides. Our special ed in particular has added several positions. So we've increased that. And really those are the things that account for that increase in instruction. And we're always happy to spend more in instruction. That's our mission. So again, you can see there that we're spending roughly about 60% of our funds in the classroom, which is great. That doesn't even count the support system that we have with counselors and social workers and so forth. This is truly in the classroom. Kind of moving down, you can see I'll talk to support services staff. We've got a decrease there of about 270,000. That included a placeholder that we had for some professional development that will ultimately take place next year. We also had a tech position. You may remember Ashlyn. She left us earlier in the year. We haven't replaced that, so that is a change there. Coming down to our operations and maintenance, we had a little bit of an increase. And that was primarily related to our Fortis security guards. We've added security guards so that we have a security guard at every building this year, which was great. But that's part of the increase there. Our pupil transportation went down 370,000. Initially, we had budgeted for a couple buses that were going to be about $240,000. We ended up paying for a couple of those buses out of the final proceeds of the 2019 budget. So we were able to, our 2019 budget, 2019 bond. I apologize for my misspeaking there, the 2019 bond. So we have now expended all of the funds for that 2019 bond. We'll have the final audit for that this year, and be able to put that to bed once and for all. So, and then kind of coming down, we had some, in the other services, we had some expenditures that we thought we would have this year, but will end up being pushed to next year. A little bit of, some of that is ESSER, some of our federal grants, some of our after-school programming. We had thought there would be a little bit more than has taken place so far this year. And then we had a placeholder for some mobile bathrooms that we're talking about for our athletics, and those just will not be received by June 30th. So that will be an expenditure that we push into next year. So as I said, that brings us down to about $79.4 million. We're estimating a surplus this year of about $1.6 million, which will bring our fund balance to $12,784,000, or 16% of expenditures. So again, as we talked about in the earlier budget hearing, we believe that the right number is somewhere right around 15%. That number seems to be, or that percentage seems to be the amount of assets, cash that we need to avoid borrowing from the state aid note. We will not do a state aid note this year. So that is certainly moving in the right direction. We'll have plenty of surplus to be able to weather the September month where we don't receive any payments from the state. So at this point, I would take any questions that you have regarding the final budget for 24 or 23, 24.
Anybody, board members?
I do have one, actually. I meant to ask this at the last meeting. You had mentioned that the federal sources revenue was decreasing, down at $837,259 in the 2024-2025 budget. Is that the normal amount? Is that the normal amount that we will be receiving year over year? Roughly?
Are you talking about for next year, Dennis?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that go into that. So we are spending about $3 million this year on ESSER monies that will go away next year. So we will not have those. We're also spending, we're also have in federal money about $2.4 million of IDEA B money, which is a special ed federal grant that we receive. The ISD is changing things next year. We will not necessarily receive the funding out of the IDEA B grant. Rather, we will receive, in lieu of that, we will receive local tax revenue from the levy that the ISD does on the community, on Macomb County for special ed. So they're basically just taking the federal money back and giving us local money. For us, it's a good trade. It's the same. It's a 1-for-1. We're not losing any money or anything like that. But obviously with local tax revenue, less reporting, less regulation. So for us, it makes life a little bit easier, and probably also for the ISD because they don't have 21 federal grant budgets to try and consolidate into one and try and report on. So I think all the way around, it makes sense for the county and for Anchor Bay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I think the only comment I have, Todd, is that the board has been very specific, and same with the finance committee, about conservative budgeting. And, for this year, again, I'm okay with coming in, we 1.5% over what we projected in 6 months ago. I don't think, again, we keep driving home that we don't want to be caught when we sit down at this meeting and realize that we didn't hit our targets. So I appreciate you coming in, 1.5% over what we originally proposed, back in December. Then, of course, if you go back to June 21 of 23, you were in the same boat you are today with not having any idea of what, type of funding we're going to get, what the categoricals are going to be, and what's our money going to be. So myself personally, I'm happy with, what you're submitting, and obviously we'll get audited, and that's not usually an issue because you and Robin do a great job on that front too. But I appreciate you exceeding, even what we set up as almost, I don't want to say a dartboard target, because I know there's more to it than that, but that you set up a year ago, that you brought to us a year ago. You maintained it throughout the year and finished a little bit above with our fund balance. I personally appreciate that.
Yeah, and as I've stated earlier, there's so many assumptions that go into creating one of these budgets, and it's really been kind of, like I said, an odd year with so much funding coming out late in the year. And so it was kind of interesting to me as Robin and I were reviewing this, that, kind of our original budget that we did, in terms of the bottom line, what we were coming in was actually a little closer than we were, in December. But again, a lot of that has to do with just different things that we weren't sure about, whether or not we were going to be able to fill those positions or whether or not we were going to receive that funding. But thanks, Pat. I appreciate you saying that. It is an arduous task to put one of these together. We comb through about 4,000 lines of budget to do that, and a lot of assumptions, a lot of hard work goes into this. And I gotta give a lot of credit, I should say, to Robin Randazzo for countless hours putting this together. So thank you.
If there's no additional comments, we'll move on to Esser. I assume that's you again, Todd?
Yeah, sure. So if I could have you pull up the
Oh, that's-
website,
Sure.
I'm sure. So I'm sure Dominic's chuckling a little bit. He's asked me about this several times. So, but we're required to do an update on Esser every 6 months. I am happy to say this will be the final update on Esser. We had to put together a couple plans. So we had the return to learn and continuity of service plan. We have not made changes to that since we originally put that out. It has been pretty much the same in terms of how we're keeping our students safe, how we're notifying the public, how we're doing the things that we do to keep students and staff safe. Obviously, we returned to in-person learning. And so if I could have you scroll down a little bit, I'm going to skip more so to the, and I'm happy to take any questions from the board or from the community on our plan. This is something that we keep out on the website. So even if you don't have familiarity with it tonight, if I could have you open the spending plan piece, I'll go through that a little bit. So my contact information is at the very bottom of the page. If you need to get a hold of me or get in touch with me, if you've got questions about our ESSER funding or suggestions, I would take those. Feel free for the public to contact me and take those. But in discussing our spending plan, so, we had several things that we needed to do. There's a 25% requirement of learning loss that we had to spend our grant on. We spent a significantly more on that than the required 20%. In fact, that was where the vast majority of our funds were spent. And so, what does that mean? Well, that included, as we talked about in the past, a number of additional tutors. We've added a number of teachers to reduce class sizes in some cases. We've added teachers to in a science special to address certain learning loss areas there. And we continue to fund those into the future, but for this year and for the prior year, we funded that all out of our ESSER money. So those are a lot of the supports and the things that we've put in place with that money. There's also a piece with regard to technology. We've purchased a number of technology related items, whether that be Chromebooks, or subscriptions to different educational software packages. So we bought a number of things with that. And then with respect to the kind of the final category that I want to touch on is, social and emotional support for our students. And that has really been, I think, one of the most impactful ways we've spent these funds. Before we did not have a social worker at every single building. We had oftentimes one social worker splitting 2, 3, 4 buildings at a time. Now we have a social worker at every building. And I know the staff, the principals certainly appreciate that kind of support. We've added counselors at both the high school and the middle schools. That's been great. We've added coaches and MTSS coaches, which talks to our intervention and working directly with kids and teachers on interventions that might be helpful to those students. So we've added a lot of supports there. And again, I'm proud to say that going into 24-25, we are not going to cut any of those folks or any of those supports out of the budget. They will be in our budget for 24-25. And we plan to continue business as usual. And we'll do that based on all of the other funds that we've been kind of securing and holding back to make sure that we have adequate room once those federal monies disappear from us or once they're expended, that we'll have enough financial wherewithal to continue all of those items that I just spoke to. So I think that's the piece I'm most happy about, and still be able to do that without going into deficit or taking away from the fund balance that we have. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those with respect to how we're spending our ESSER funds or anything related to our ESSER return to learn plan.
Ms. Knox?
I just have a comment that I'll
Yep.
Piggyback on what Mr. Green said previously. It's outstanding that not only were you guys able to utilize these funds responsibly, but that we're able to continue these. It wasn't like one time you showed up with a pony and that was it, and then we couldn't keep it. So that's an outstanding job, and it really speaks volumes about all the work you guys are putting in, not just with the free money, but making sure that it can have a lasting impression. So outstanding job.
Yeah, from the start, I know Phil, Robin, and I, when we received these funds, we're very focused on, not putting ourselves in a bind, not spending that money in a way that obligated us too much into the future where we couldn't cover it once those funds disappeared. So I appreciate your comment, and yeah, we've spent a lot of time ensuring that wouldn't happen.
Anyone else? I'll just throw out one more quick comment that in the state of Michigan right now, according to national psychologists and counselors and social workers, state of Michigan is short 1,000 of those staff members in public schools. And somehow you guys have managed to not only fund them, as Ms. Knox mentioned, but actually find these people. So I will commend you on that. I think coming out of COVID, that was a crucial part to our plan. And sure, we have the learning loss, which I know we're working on. We're working on it with summer and extended programs and after school. But to somehow in a state that's short 1,000 people for those public school positions, you guys managed to find them. That's great for, not only you guys to fund them, but Ms. Gonzalez, I'm sure she's out there somewhere, to actually find these bodies. That's impressive.
Yep, I agree.
Anyone else? All right, sir. Thank you. We'll move on to communications.
No communications.
I trust we'll be seeing emails coming out over the next 24 to 48 hours, hopefully with news.
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Okay. Well, it is dinner time. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented With the approval of the minutes from the 5/22/24 regular meeting, personnel report, financial report, and the bills payable report for May of 2024.
I'll make the motion.
I will
Approve.
second.
All right, motion by Mr. Moses. See, I remembered it that time.
What's it?
I remembered your name that
And I'm
time.
proud of you.
We've only
It's
been
only
up here,
been
what,
6 years.
6 years, right? Seconded by Ms. Knox. Let's call roll on that if you would, sir. Any discussion? How about a roll call, sir?
Sure. Motion by Mr. Moses. Yes. Ms. Knox.
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Vinatieri.
Yes.
Mr. DeRue.
Yes.
Mr. Green
Yes.
and Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Moving on to new business. Item number 1 on your agenda is administrative contracts. Administrative contracts, recommendations for contract extensions were shared with you in your board pack. So those administrators are being presented for contract extension as an Anchor Bay School District Administrator through June 30 of 2026. The recommended action by administration is that the Board of Education approve the administrator contracts through June 30, 2026 as presented. So I will entertain a motion to that effect if somebody feels so inclined.
I'll make the motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Moses, supported by Mr. Ventatelli. And I think we're going to call a roll call since it involves contracts. Oh, we want to discuss. Yes, again, long day. My apologies. Ms. Berkmeyer.
I just wanted, because I think she's out, Miss Strickland. In the audience? Yeah. Because I see her name on here and we,
Always get tied up that our new principal.
hello? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I believe she was on the personnel report, so I just wanted to say welcome, to Lighthouse.
Yeah, our new Lighthouse principal, Rachel Strickland, coming to us from K-PAC.
Who is not going to sit at that table and not come up to the podium and say hi. Thanks, Lisa. I didn't catch that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'm
evening.
super thrilled and honored to be here tonight, but even more so to be the Lighthouse principal, eager to get into the building and to kick off the year. So thank you so much.
Very much. Anybody, any comments or questions of our new elementary principal?
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard and you got some big shoes to fill. This Hoffman was a big loss.
It was.
I'm sorry, if you guys can really speak into your microphone because the ventilation's going, it's really hard to hear you all here.
I just wanted to say welcome aboard, but you have some big shoes to fill because Ms. Hoffman was an excellent principal, but I'm sure you're up for the task.
Thank you.
I just want to say welcome and we're just happy to have you. And please reach out to any of us or Mr. Jankowski with any issues or needs. And we're excited to have you join us.
Awesome. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming out tonight
Absolutely.
in the middle of your summer.
And keep your field day quiet next year.
I forgot about
You're
that.
off already. Jeez.
She's like, what are you talking
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't know it.
Oh, she doesn't know. Somebody shared the email with her. All right, enough of that. Anybody else, any comments? Okay, hearing none. Roll call, sir.
Motion by Mr. Moses. Yes. Mr. Vinatieri.
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. DeRue.
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item number 2 is the Assistant Superintendent's contract. Administration is recommending that we approve the contract as it has been presented to you for a contract extension through June 30 of 2026. So I will entertain a motion to approve Superintendent Rathbun's, Assistant Superintendent Rathbun's, contract through June 30, 2026. Eh? You say eh?
I'll make the I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Moses. Any comments, questions, concerns? Besides eh? I don't know if you heard that, Mr. Rathbun. We had an eh up here.
I said, meh.
Hearing none, let's move to a roll call, sir.
Motion by Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Moses.
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue. Mr. Green
Yes.
and Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
Congratulations, Todd. Looks like we're going to keep you around for another couple years. Don't get distracted on your boat. All right, item number 3, the resolution of the school bond loan fund. The district participates in the school loan revolving fund and every year is required to perform a fiscal analysis to determine if the tax revenues collected from the district taxpayers is sufficient to pay the district's bonded debt obligations for the school year. For the 2024-25 school year, it is anticipated that the district will have excess funds of approximately $4,876,000 that will be used to pay the outstanding balance of roughly $19,366,599 currently held by the school loan revolving fund. The resolution before the board authorizes the payment of the excess tax funds to the school loan revolving fund in satisfaction of a portion of the district's outstanding debt. The recommended action, apologize, from Mr. Jankowski is that the board approve the school bond loan fund as presented. I will entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vendatelli, supported by Ms. Knox. Conversations, questions?
I would like if Mr. Rathbun could kind of explain to us what that's all about.
So the reason for this, let me start with that, is that oftentimes what will happen is a school district will have needs for facilities or other things that they go out and they go to the taxpayers and bond for. And so they'll ask the voters to approve a bond. The bond goes out for sale. Sales are made and then the bond proceeds come in. We have to repay our taxpayers. So in an example, just to kind of illustrate what the school bond revolving fund does is if, for example, when we levy our tax of 10 mils, if that were to come to, let's say, $20 million that we get from taxpayers levying that 10 mils. And this is just an example. It's not actual dollar amounts, but if our bond obligation to pay bondholders who we sold those bonds to is $25 million for that year, and we only bring in $20 million, we would not be able to pay our bond holders as we're required to do. So the state of Michigan has a fund, the student loan revolving fund, that allows school districts to borrow from yet another line to ensure that they're able to meet their borrowing obligations for the bonds that they sold. So in the past, Anchor Bay had to borrow from the school bond revolving fund in order to make all of their payments that were required to for bond holders. Now what's kind of happened, even though we've just had a large bond and, we were able to do that without increasing the mills, what is starting to happen is we are now getting proceeds enough. And a lot of that has to do with the tax base continuing to go up and go up fast, is that we're generating enough revenue from the 10 mills that we actually have more than we need to pay our immediate obligation. And so now what we're doing is taking that excess money and paying it to the school bond loan fund. So it'd be like kind of paying off your credit card a little bit faster because you've got a little bit extra money. And so that's what this resolution is authorizing us to do, is to take that excess $5 million that we plan on having after we've paid all of our bond obligations and paying that back to the school bond loan fund. So we owe less money. We'll owe, instead of the 20 million that Pat read in his resolution, it'll be closer to 15 million.
All right, I thank you for that, and I think the public probably thanks you too, so they,
that?
I said the public probably thanks you too, because
Yeah,
it's something
absolutely.
we hear more of than the public does, so that was very helpful, thank you.
Any additional questions? Can you remind me who made the motion and who supported? Vendatelli and supported by Ms. Knox. Well, since we're spending $4.8 million, perhaps you could call a roll for me if you wouldn't be too much trouble.
No. Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes,
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. DeRue?
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
and Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
All right, moving on to the next agenda item is the 24-25 original budget approval. Will Mr. Rathbun be presenting again, or are we just going to approve what we have in front of us? Oh, you've had enough? Okay. All right, you've all been shared the 24-25 original budget as we move into this next fiscal year. At this time, the recommendation is to approve the budget that has been presented to you. So I will entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Mr. Moses on fire with Ms. Knox. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. Do I need to roll call this one as well?
Just because it's.
Although you would, okay, sure. Call it again.
All right, Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes,
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue, Mr. Green,
Yes.
and Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Next agenda item is the 2023-2024 final budget approval. Dovetailing with the presentation we already had, the recommendation is to approve the final budget amendment that is in front of you, dated June 26th of 2024. I will entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second.
All right, Mr. Moses and Mr. Vinatelli. Any questions, comments, or concerns from the board?
I'll just make one quick comment. I don't know if you guys can hear me okay. Because we've got our fund equity balance up there. It was not, it was in some hot water a couple of years ago, but now I think we're in a really good place and I'm happy to see that.
I would agree with that. Anyone else? Mr. Secretary.
Motion, Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. DeRue. Ms. Knox,
yes,
Mr. Green,
Yes.
and Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item 6. Varsity cheer will attend the North American Spirit XL Camp in Kalahari, Ohio, July 25th through 28th, 2024. And the JV and the freshman cheer will attend the Champion Camp at Alma College in Alma, Michigan, July 26th through the 28th, 2024. The recommendation from administration is that we approve both of those field trips at this time. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
so moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Moses. Any further discussion? It is 2 field trips, sir. One is varsity going to Kalahari, and then the second one is JV and freshman cheer going to Alma College. Actually, at roughly the same time. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I see here that the varsity will be gone July 25th through 28th and JV and freshman, the 26th through 28th. Do we have coaches available for all of?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that was my only question. Thank you.
Any other comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving those trips signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Ohio comment on that?
I think everybody knows how I feel about spending money out of state. I didn't figure I'd beat the dead horse, but no, I think the cheer coaches would probably come down here and be not happy with me if I didn't vote for it. So misunderstanding why I'm voting against it. So next on the agenda is the policy, the first reading. In front of you have several policy updates. The policy committee did meet last Monday, last Wednesday, was it?
Monday.
It's a long day, last
Yeah.
Monday. To discuss all of these policies and opted to move them forward for the first reading to the board. I don't think do I need to read through all of these, sir? I don't think so, do I?
You don't have to, but that has been a practice in the past.
Yes.
Recommended.
Clearly, I am not with the practice of the past type guy. Adoption of amendment of bylaws and policies, policy 1003. Conflict between policies and administration regulations, policy 1004. Cardiac emergency response plan, policy 2007. Selection of media center library materials, policy 3005. Parental objections, policy 3006. Other matters of employment, policies 4005. Discrimination and harassment, policy 8007. Digital communication, policy 8009. Safety and security, policy 6002. Organization and functioning of the board, policy 1001. And reimbursement of business and travel expenses, policy 5009. Recommended action of both the superintendent and the policy committee is that we allow these to be read into the record for the first reading. I don't think we necessarily need a vote today, do we?
No.
Not on the first reading? Is there, well, it's out there. Is there any comments or questions about those policies? And if you do have any and they do pop up, we certainly can talk about it, and we don't need to get until August
Yeah. So
unless you
end of August.
try something in July. Moving on. Textbooks, item number 8. Recommendation to purchase middle school math materials after an extensive review process, including a committee of 10 educators from both middle schools, elementary administration, and our CBE consultant. We recommend the purchase of Big Ideas math materials for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math. The committee reviewed materials from 4 well-known vendors and determined the Big Ideas was the best overall fit for Anchor Bay. The committee felt Big Ideas was rigorous and aligned with the state standards, allowed for differentiated instruction, and offered a connection to careers to provide real-world relevance. The committee recommends purchasing classroom sets of books and a 6-year contract for online access for a total of, and including training, for a total of $151,000, $465.25. The recommended action, and it sounds like from the curriculum committee and from the superintendent, is that the Board of Education approve the purchase of Big Ideas math materials for 6, 7, 8 math grades. Material for $151,464.25. I will entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Vendatelli, supported by Mr. Moses. Anybody on our curriculum committee have anything they want to add?
I'd like to add just one thing. So we talked about these textbooks and the content that's inside them. I think the way that the problems are laid out aligns directly with competency-based education, where it has differentiated problems for, let's say, students who are doing well. They have advanced problems and students who aren't doing so well. It kind of fits the need of the student. And so I think this aligns with our strategic vision for curriculum, and I think this is a good purchase.
Anyone else?
Will parents be able to figure it out to be able to help their kids?
Math hasn't changed. Just
Math
the
hasn't changed since when? That's correct. I just look at the book and hand it over to my daughter.
I did not find out if there's answers in the back.
You did not. Anyone, anything else? All right, since it's $151,000, we will call a roll call, sir.
Motion by Mr. Ventilli,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Oh, it's a different order. Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue. Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Next up on the agenda is instructional staff bonus. This year, the state of Michigan created a categorical funding source called the Educator Compensation Grant. That categorical was restricted to providing compensation for classroom teachers and other instructional staff. The grant did not allow for any compensation for support staff. Administration, in the interest of being fair with all of our employees, is recommending the following bonuses for the support staff and administrators that did not receive any compensation under the aforementioned grant. The proposals have been presented and shared with you. The recommended action by both the Finance Committee and the Superintendent is the Board of Education approve these bonuses for the support staff and administrators that did not receive any compensation under the previous grant. And again, all of those numbers were shared with each of you. I will entertain a motion to that effect. If you're so moved. All right. Motion by Mr. Moses,
I will second.
support by Ms. Knox. Some discussion, questions, comments?
Just a comment. I think it's a good idea to even everybody up. It seems like the right thing to do.
Anyone else?
I
With,
s-
go ahead,
um,
I'm sorry.
I'm curious if we can be like walked through how this process went through, because I just, and the numbers that we were shared, when I look at some groups that have larger amounts of people, it looks like less, there's less dollar amounts spent. I'm thinking that went toward because of maybe longevity
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
points.
Part
It's,
of it's small. Yeah, we, just like with the teachers, what we did with the instructional staff, I should say. We wanted to kind of base it off of the longevity in the district, the number of years that they've been there. So for depending on the group and depending on the experience of the group, that's basically they're tiered, and Todd did a lot of the negotiation with the group, so you can kind of.
Sure. So, we kind of started out with the same, kind of the same approach that we did with the teachers. That's how we initially started with approaching each of the groups. As the board's aware, a number of our staff are represented by different unions. So we have to negotiate with each of those unions every time we talk about compensation. So we would work through the process. I think, Lisa, was what you asked. The process was to, essentially approach them. We had some conversations about, this is what the teachers did. And then from there, the negotiations would proceed. In several of the situations, we were able to, for the district, negotiate the compensation as a bonus rather than longevity. The difference for the district is that we are not required to pay the, roughly 40% retirement for a bonus, but we are required to pay that for longevity. So although we tried to get the teachers to go for a bonus, they opted for longevity. That will be added to their final compensation. That seemed to be a popular thing for them, but some of our other groups were fine with a bonus. And so that's what we negotiated with them. To Phil's point, we still kept it based on longevity. That seemed to be something that all the groups were okay with, and that seemed to be acceptable to all of them. And so we did kind of apply that same longevity piece to each of the deals that we did. And as Phil said, 100%. So if you're in a group where everybody's been there for, 10, 20 years, the compensation for that particular group is going to be a little bit higher than a group where you're looking at new people that are coming in, a larger group where you might have, like even the teachers, where you might have 20 or 30 or 40 staff that haven't even been here 3 years. That would not be unusual for that size of a group. I did do a little bit of analysis earlier just to talk with Phil, to kind of figure out if you took the kind of the average compensation that we did for teachers and then kind of the average compensation for that larger support group of about 180 staff, And it was relatively close. I think it was, the teachers were around 1,300 on average. That's an average across the entire group. For the other staff, it was a little bit less than that, maybe $100 less than that across the entire group. So, but again, I want to be very clear. These are negotiated. These are not things that we can just,
Yeah, and just to add to that,
force into.
a lot of the logic was, remember, what was it 2 years ago now that we did the $15 an hour? So we moved a lot of the lower levels of the groups up. And so that was taken care of. So then this was to offset for the people who didn't see that large increase. That's why I went longevity. Same thing with the teachers, because as we progress up the salary scale, the first step gets chopped off and the second step and so on. So again, those people at the lower end of experience, we're seeing larger increases. So this again weights it towards the more experienced teachers.
My other question was, in your notes, you had mentioned that for some groups, para, AFSCME, central office staff required 3 years of service to be eligible. Was that because that's what they bargained among themselves? Like they set that, or we imposed that? Like,
Well,
because I know
so,
like the teachers, it
yeah,
kind of, you got something immediately.
yep.
So how did that?
I think it was through bargaining. We kind of said, this is what, we started with that particular, and then it, morphed from there into, only they wanted it to, like Phil said, wait a little bit more towards, if you've been there 6 months, they didn't necessarily, and in our support staff situations, those tend to change a little bit more frequently than a teacher. Typically a teacher can come and go halfway through the year, but that's pretty rare. Usually we get our teachers at the beginning of the year and they're with us throughout the year. Support staff, that's a little bit different, where they can come and go, throughout the year. And so it was thought that they didn't necessarily want folks to participate who had just gotten into their position.
Anything else, Ms. Berkmeyer? Anybody else? Any comments, questions, concerns? All right, so the motion's on the floor. Can you call the roll for me, sir?
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatelli,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue. Mr. Richards is a yes. Mr. Green
Yes.
and Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thanks, Todd. Last thing on our new business agenda, award recommendations for the varsity baseball field drainage. The Anchor Bay School District accepted bids on June 11th, 2024 for the varsity baseball field drainage. Included is the bid tabulation that was shared with you. Corey Wiley, who is here, our maintenance supervisor, has reviewed the bids. It is recommended to approve the alternate bid provided by Dura Edge in the amount of $217,187. The alternate exceeds the base bid, providing additional drainage and field restoration. This project is being funded by the 2023 bond and will be completed prior to the spring 2025 baseball season. The recommended action is that the Board of Education approve the award of the high school field drainage project as listed to Dura Edge in the amount of $217,187. I will entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Moses, supported by Ms. Knox. Some discussion?
Is there anybody that can do a quick overview of what they're planning on doing?
I think Corey's here. She
I
could
mean-
probably give us an idea.
And also, Corey, if you could fill us into why you guys went with the alternate. I know that was in our board update, but for the public to know.
Sure. All right, so I'll try and be quick, but there's a lot of work that's being done, so I kind of listed it because I kind of thought I'd have these questions. For both the infield and the warning track, they'll be doing a topography survey for both of the fields that will help provide to determine that they're making sure that we're providing adequate grade for proper drainage. So they've included that. We also went with the alternate because they provided more than double the field drainage. They're also guaranteeing that the field will drain and stay dry. Neither one of the bids were guaranteeing that with the base bid. So that was really our driving factor there. We are going with, it's called a Duramax infield. Right now we have a Washington ball mix, so they'll be taking that up and putting in a Duramax, which actually likes a moist surface. So that field will drain better even when we do have those rains, just on the infield itself. In addition, they're installing about 5,500 linear feet of drainage tile. The base bid was about 1,600. So you can see, just by the additional drain tile, that'll provide a lot of more drainage. They'll be taking up, let's see, the drain tiles will be installed every 20 feet from the infield arc to the home run fence. They're removing the entire infield grassing grade and installing new sod. They're constructing a 10-inch mound with new pitching rubber. There's a 105-foot arc that will be removed and graded. New sod that will be installed 12-foot back to the arc and creating a 93-foot arc. On the warning track, they're removing an access lip. And then they'll also be installing the DuraTrack crushed brick there to help provide drainage. So, does that answer your questions?
Yes.
It does. I had one question as well. So apologies if I'm going to butcher this, but I believe that this is not going to prevent if, for example, the drain, where the water goes, it goes to a drainage ditch. If that drainage ditch backs up because we get a significant amount of rain, there's really nothing we can do about that.
All right. So the one thing that I learned this spring, all of your athletic fields drain to a 42-inch discharge that goes to a retention pond. The retention pond then drains to Crapple Creek. So two things, the retention pond was full with all of the water, so we pumped that down for about 4 days. And Crapple Creek was not draining great. So it was very slow. So we had multiple issues going on. So the drainage on our site is not, once the water drains into that 42-inch discharge, it goes to the retention pond. So, once it's actually draining, it'll go there. The one thing that we've learned is we need to make sure we, keep an eye on the level of that retention pond. And if it needs to be pumped just to kind of help that drainage in the back, that's what we'll have to do.
Thank you.
I do have one quick question. I know that it was noted that it will be completed by the spring 2025 baseball season. Did they say approximately a start date and how long?
So I talked to them yesterday. They want to move the project up. So they would like to start the week of July 8th, pending approval tonight. That way, the ground is harder right now. It'll provide a little bit less mess when they go to do the work. They expect it to be done, weather pending, by the end of July.
I can't remember who's, and you probably know, who's responsible for Crapple Creek? Is that the city of New Baltimore or is that Macomb County?
It's Macomb County.
All right, so make sure they know that we're about to drop, $250,000 into this field, and we'd really rather not have Crapple Creek not flowing and causing issues.
Well, and there
for
was-
the retention in the
right.
field.
Yep. When we walked Crapple Creek, there was nothing blocking it. There was just a lot of rain, so it was just, a multitude of different events, but there was nothing actually blocking the flow. It just had nowhere to go.
Yeah, Crapple Creek crosses county line and it runs through that vacant property that runs behind Presidential Village and all the way down behind all those houses under the bridge on Ashley. And if you've ever ridden your Wave Runner up to Dairy Queen, that is actually where Crapple Creek dumps out into Lake St. Clair.
That is Crapple Creek by Dairy Queen.
That is Crapple Creek by Dairy Queen. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, roll call, sir.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Daru, Mr. Richards is a yes, Mr. Green,
Yes.
and Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thanks, Corey, and thanks, Superintendent Jankowski. I know you invested some time over the past 2 weeks meeting with baseball parents, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be happy to hear that we seem to have a solution and we didn't just settle for the bare minimum of getting the water out of there, but we're essentially rebuilding their field at this point. So that's great news because it was in bad shape. I know we've all walked it and it was not good. So we appreciate that.
So for light rain next year too.
All right, moving on to let's points of pride. Why don't we start with Mr. Moses?
My point of pride is, well, welcoming a new, principal. Excited about that and, you know, just the whole Anchor Bay community. It's a pretty awesome place to grow up and live and a pretty awesome school district to be a part of.
Mr. Benatelli? Ms. Knox?
Point of pride was, way back earlier this year, the senior class, sent some representatives out to talk to us about holding one graduation. Of course, it was their graduation, so they worked all together with the staff and everything to put on one graduation. I myself was a little apprehensive about how that was going to go. It turned out fantastic. It was, the flow was very quick, so I appreciate everyone who helped put that together and brought in extra bleachers and shook things up a little bit, and the board was on the side and we got to actually talk to the seniors and that was really fun. So point of pride is that our senior class stood up for something that they really wanted. Everyone made it happen because it was their day and it turned out far better than expected, and we plan to keep on doing it that way. So score one for the seniors.
Mr. Drew? No? Ms. Burkmeyer?
Mine is, welcome again to Ms. Strickland, and I want to thank, Ms. Farley, who introduced herself to us, I believe at the last meeting, and then met with Mr. Jankowski and, Ms. Wiley. You might have been there as well. And, I'm just grateful that the group, we can kind of just get communication between different groups, and that everybody's willing to kind of meet and work together and kind of just put our heads together to try and solve problems, you know, the best that we can. And I also to Mr. Jankowski in the sense, you know, we've also talked about the middle school realignment and starting a committee with parents and staff towards that route as well, that I think will be forthcoming. Just to kind of, I think things go a lot better when we all just work together and listen to each other. So I'm just grateful for all the parties that were able to do that, and, that we can kind of go ahead and get things rolling on and to somewhat satisfaction for everybody.
Thank you. Sure.
Sure. Thank you. Points of pride is going to be congratulations to our seniors. Graduation was great. Great event, as Ms. Knox said. I'd like also to thank all the teachers and staff that also came out to be part of the graduation. Congratulations to Jackie Cooney, who won the Excellence in Transportation Award at the 52nd Annual Macomb County School Bus Rodeo hosted by the MISD. Congratulations to our high school medical education students that passed the patient care technician test. They also received their certificates and pins. And finally, congratulations to the varsity girls soccer team, the varsity girls softball team, and the varsity boys baseball team on becoming district champions. Awesome job. Thank you.
I didn't realize that Ms. Cooney had won. I've judged that competition, and you haven't seen anything until you've seen 200 bus drivers show up in buses and compete. It's intense, and it's amazing what drivers can do with something that's, seats 79 kids and where they can. It's just amazing. I've judged it. I was kind of blown away. I also enjoyed the graduation. I like the ceremony, and I also shout out to our seniors that graduated. We've set the standard now, though I'm expecting to see probably September, October. This year's graduating seniors showing up and kind of giving us an idea of what they want. I know we've got the staff that's out there and it's their graduation. So I enjoyed how it was set up. I too had doubts when I heard that we were going to have one ceremony, but we were done in an hour and 45 minutes, which was phenomenal. I wish we would have done that last year when it was 126 degrees in the sun. But I appreciate the effort that went into that and the organization of our principal and, I think it was Miss Kitchens ran that for us, right? Is that who kind of coordinated the graduation? As well as Ms. Freilich in the office. So awesome job. Phil, how about a legislative update?
There's no update since 6:15. So
Okay. I kind of touched on all the committee updates. Is there anyone else that wants to throw something out from, I know we all had several meetings over the past 2 weeks. Did I miss anything? No? Awesome. All right, then I will entertain a motion to go into closed session. The Board of Education moves to closed session for student discipline pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Section 8B for student discipline, and Section 8H to consider material exempt from disclosure by state or federal statute. So I will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Make the motion.
I will second.
Motion by Mr. Moses, surprise, surprise. Motion supported by Ms. Knox. Roll call, sir.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue. Mr. Richards is a yes, Mr. Green
Yes.
and Ms. Burkmeyer.
Yes.
Motion carries. We will go into closed session at 8:41 PM.
we will be in the conference.
All right, I will entertain a motion to come back out of closed session at 10:51 PM.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call the roll?
Ms. Knox,
Here.
Mr. Moses.
Here.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Here.
Mr. Drew,
Here.
Mr. Richards is here, Mr. Green,
Yes,
There's the vote, guys.
Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
I know you're all here. I'm assuming you're here means yes, so. Okay, we are back out of closed session.
I'd like to make a motion to have a conditional reinstatement of student number 02656 under the following conditions. One, they have to enroll in summer school as of July 8th of 2024 and complete a minimum of 0.5 or a half credit. Enroll in after-school credit recovery in the fall. Maintain regular and punctual attendance. Participate in the educational process by completing the majority of their assignments. And they will communicate with school staff, teachers, counselors, social workers, and administrators if they need assistance with their academics and or social emotional well-being.
I will support.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Ms. Berkmeyer. Any additional discussion before we go to a roll call vote on this one too? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary?
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes, Mr. Green,
Yes. Motion carries.
I would like to make a motion to permanently expel student number 012075.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Ms. Knox, supported by Mr. Vinatelli. Any further discussion or questions? Please call the roll, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Knox,
Yes.
Mr. Vinatieri,
Yes.
Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Richards is a yes, Mr. Green,
Yes.
and Ms. Berkmeyer.
Yes.
Motion carries. I will entertain a motion at 10:53 to adjourn the meeting.
Make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Moses, supported by Ms. Knox. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting adjourned.